what are you doing? And she goes, well, I just got in from herding cows. Well, she and Roy have a farm in upstate New York, and they raise Scottish, or the Scottish Scottish Highland cattle. If you don't know what those are, Google them. They're beautiful animals. But so the connection was really bad. So I said, Judy, get off your horse, get back to the city, because you got to do this interview tomorrow, and you need a good connection. So hopefully she's in New York and not at the farm. But anyway, we'll see that. So to give a little convenient metaphor segue here, Judy actually took the bull by the horns, and she is the one that is really responsible for getting the net.
I'll bring my computer in. Actually.
Yeah, I do have a question, Heather.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this on the brick that what you were showing us?
Okay, somebody needs to mute here.
Brick. Is that inside and out or?
All right, so anyway, she's the one that really was behind the National Historic Register designation. It was her initiative, and she did all of the exhausting paperwork and got the whole block of houses listed on the National Historic Register. And we had a little party. Actually, we got the register was at the end of last year, and then we had a party in January, and I got to meet Al then. And anyway, so let me give you to Judy, and she will introduce Al.
Oh,
You're muted.
okay, I'm muted.
You're good now. No, you're good.
Okay, thank you, Robert. I'm gonna just leave it to the film. Al did a fantastic job. For anybody that's listening, if anybody is interested in the National Historic Registry, just give me a call. Brandon has my contact information. I'd love to help you out. I'm a serial restorer of homes, and for us, this mid-century modern, this unique, amazing house that Safi and Robert's father created, and Max has done an incredible job restoring. We can talk later about how one does that sort of thing. I think, the reimagining of a home or the restoration of a home, they're kind of two different things, but both require the skills of architects, and certainly those who have been inspired by Jean's work. We're just laymen. Al is a marvelous director, producer. I don't know if he's I don't see him on the panoply of pictures, but AIA works for the Polk County Public Access Television. He put this together using the application for the National Historic Registry, talking to the family members, but also just having a fine eye. And I'd be curious to see how everyone reacts to the film. So Al, without further ado, you want to give a little bit of your background, Al?
Sure.
Al?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
There you are. Hi, Al.
All right. Hi. Yeah, I've been working PGTV for over 10 years and just doing various projects from sports to films like this, short films, documentaries, and I'm glad to be a part of this. Had been thinking about covering Jean Leedy for a couple of years before this, because I had covered Frank Lloyd Wright architecture, similar type of documentary. We'd been talking with various people, came in contact with Cassie. She let me know. I didn't know about Jean Leedy till I talked to Cassie. And then a couple of years before this. And then so I said, that'd be great. But it never happened. Things, just had to come to this point, and all the connections just came together for the History Center. Judy taking the bull by the horns and going for it and doing this whole restoration and the registry and everything. So it all worked out.
If everyone knows how to use chat on the Zoom, if you do have any questions, please type them in the chat and we can kind of respond to them as the film goes, or we can save them till the end, or, you know, just write them down and remember them. But so I'm gonna start playing the video. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear it when it starts playing. Is everyone seeing the opening screen right now? Okay.
Yep, I do.
Oh,
Can we hear it good?
It's,
Go up a little.
To fully appreciate the work of the renowned Sarasota School modern architect, Jean Leedy, it's important to understand the times in which he worked, the needs of Floridians and of the country as a whole during the mid-20th century time period, and the values that elevate the human condition through
it might help if whoever's not talking, mute your audio. It could help.
architecture.
Actually, Brandy, you might have to have your audio on, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
The 1950s was a time of incredible change. Remember that up until 1949, there was an open cattle range in Florida. Beef cattle were allowed to graze and travel freely throughout Polk County. It's hard to believe that today, isn't it? But after World War II, things really took off. The nation's first destination theme park, Cypress Gardens in Winter Haven, became world famous for its water skiing shows, beautiful bells, and stunning plantings. It also attracted a whole range of celebrities, from Esther Williams, Betty Davis, to Carol Burnett, and others. In 1956, Elvis Presley thrilled audiences with 3 performances at Polk Theater. Frances Langford, the actress-singer who grew up in Lakeland, became prominent during this time. The years between 1950 and 1957 were a happy time for Americans with an abundance of security and imagination. The war was over. Older Americans had reliable income through the newly enacted Social Security program. American savings were now protected through the new FDIC. War veterans were given low interest, no down payment loans, which encouraged homeownership throughout the nation. In a way, Florida benefited the most from all of these federal programs. What better place to retire with your new income than warm, sunny Florida? And many vets who had trained during the war years at Polk County's vast network of Army, Navy, and air bases returned with their families. The federal highway program that eventually resulted in Interstate 4 in 1958 truly opened up Central Florida to these new residents too. The population of Winter Haven, where Jean Leedy got his first architectural commission, increased 4-fold from just after the war until 1955.
Housing dominated the conversation just at the time when Jean Leedy graduated from the University of Florida in 1950 with a degree in architecture. Leedy immediately headed down to Sarasota, where the masters of a new modern architectural style were beginning to assemble. Paul Rudolph gave Jean Leedy his first start. Within a few years, and after a stint in the Air Force, Leedy earned his own first solo commissions: Winter Haven Sparrow Residence and the Cranny Spec Houses, the homes on Drexel Avenue Northeast that have recently been added to the National Historic Register.
Gene spoke a lot about Frank Lloyd Wright. He spoke a lot about Rudolph, but he was particularly influenced by Wright. He told me he had a chance to meet him when Wright was doing Florida Southern College. he used to always pull out Frank Lloyd Wright's Wasmith edition, which he was fortunate to have copy of those, which I always wanted to get from him. But he always talked about Wright in relationship of space, you know, again, connecting the interior and exterior space, the compression of space, honesty of materials. Those things really you can see in Gene's work.
But Paul Rudolph, the architect whose inventive use of materials and groundbreaking designs, who later led the Yale School of Architecture and who created a new American tropical style, also inspired Gene Leedy's work, especially regarding materials.
Some of his early work, like his office building done in 1963, still beautiful today. The Sparrow House, which is right across from the Dorman House, done almost 20 years apart. Totally different homes, you know, from a one-story post and beams, delicate steel building to a powerful multi-story pre-stressed concrete double T right across the street from each other, but equally powerful.
Gene Leedy was a giant of Florida architecture. He was one of the leading practitioners of the Sarasota School of Architecture movement. And through him and through that movement, I was exposed to an array of amazing modern architecture. Modern architecture dating back to the 50s and the 60s, really the heyday of that mid-century modern movement in Florida. And, you know, all of his ideas of space and structure just got embedded in my head. So this house and many on the street were designed in the mid-50s. I believe they're completed in late 50s, 57, 58. There is 10 total, and these are the Craney spec homes. And these are the homes that are just being celebrated now as part of the National Historic District.
He did courtyard houses. Whoever listens to this, the one thing that he did was create courtyards so people could live outside, inside their home. And today, homes are objects. They don't have any courtyards, they don't have any enclosure, they don't have any privacy. Gene Leedy is a fabulous architect, a great man for Central Florida, for the state of Florida, for the United States.
The Sarasota School of Architecture had 4 basic principles, as described by the architect and historian John Howie in his book, The Sarasota School. These principles were clarity of construction in the building's connections. In Leedy's Drexel Avenue homes, this meant exposed post and beams, and what Gene Leedy would say as an honest use of method and materials. Here you see the building's actual framing and the way in which the outbuildings connect to each other. It's very clear how these homes were imagined and constructed. Another Sarasota School principle was simple overall volumes penetrating vertically and horizontally, or what Gene Leedy referred to as floating over the Florida landscape. Flat roofs, straight lines, no curves, no unnecessary embellishment dominate this unique American modern style. And large sliding glass walls that allow the yard to become another room in these homes. Leedy was the first to use sliding glass doors as walls in Central Florida, and one large living, dining, and kitchen area blending seamlessly together without barrier walls. This was a radical idea in 1957, but has become another lasting legacy of this young genius architect. Another Sarasota school principle was economy of means, that is, using common building materials elevated to important design features.
Yeah, Gene did some amazing work, but even more amazing is where he accomplished it, you know, in Central Florida. I mean, he was a guy who took, you know, what other people would see as, you know, garbage, like industrial pre-stressed concrete double Ts that people use for warehouses, and he turns them into poetry, you know, and to do that in Polk County is, it's almost unfathomable that he was able to do that. And it showed not just his vision, but his ability to kind of see through that vision and to make others believe and connect them to that vision.
Dick Cranny, the Bartow-based entrepreneur, wood fabricator, and real estate developer who partnered with Gene Leedy on the Drexel Avenue homes, supplied most of the building materials, including the wood for framing, ceilings, and walls, and the cement block.
Dick and Gene had a business relationship and social relationship in the years before Dick met Mom. And Mom and Dick were married in '62, and Gene and Dick were in business here in 56, 57.
They were good friends. They would love this. Wish they could be here to enjoy it today.
My memories were of a 5- and 6-year-old come into the neighborhood and played with my cousin. This whole neighborhood was carved out of a grapefruit grove. So I remember grapefruit trees and climbing trees and having bologna sandwiches with my cousins across the street.
There's a shot of my mother and I. She's bathing me in a little blue tub in the front courtyard. And I remember the original fences were wood. They were greenish wood built along the front. So you had the front courtyard enclosed, and it gave a nice sense of privacy. Our friends that would come over, and they would always think, "Oh, this house is really different. You know, so much different than what most people were accustomed to." And it's like you're in a total oasis, and you know, you have no idea you're in a suburban neighborhood in Winter Haven, Florida. You know, you could be in the Far East for all you know.
It was Gene Leedy's use of common materials in uncommon ways that helped make these homes exceptional. Custom framing of the inexpensive paneling with a type of mahogany to set them apart. Elevating chipboard from a behind-the-wall material to prominent closet doors throughout the homes. Even employing pegboard to diffuse the harsh fluorescent task lighting in the kitchens. These were all simple design features that create big impact in these Drexel Avenue homes. And while only 10 homes were built on Drexel Avenue Northeast in 1957 in this new American modern style, they immediately earned the Best Home of the Year by the then arbiter of good taste, Better Homes and Gardens magazine. And Gene Leedy also received the highest achievement award by the Association of International Architects. Over 60 years, Leedy transformed the landscape throughout Central Florida with even bigger, more major commissions. The famed painter Sid Solomon commissioned a huge beach house near Sarasota. The City Hall in Winter Haven, the Winter Haven Chamber of Commerce building, and hundreds of homes and other commercial buildings rose during more than half a century, with many sporting another Gene Leedy first, the use of concrete trusses to support roof structures, a powerful design effect. inspire the nation's next generation of architects, some of whom trained under Gene Leedy.
In high school, my family moved to Winter Haven, Florida. And, I loved baseball. I played on the baseball team. And, again, from a young age, always want to be an architect. And the first thing I did when I tried out for the baseball team was fielding fly balls and such in the outfield. And, high school field, the ball gets hit over the fence on a home run. I jump over the fence to get the ball, and I saw this incredible house back there. And it turns out it was a straying house done by Gene Leedy. And, at that point, I was determined to work for Gene Leedy, not really knowing who he was. But I thought he's a guy I want to work for. And unbeknownst to me, Gene was a patron in my family's restaurant, so where I worked. And so after I found out that Gene would come in for dinner, I actually stored my portfolio in the restaurant in case he came in to impress him. Now you can imagine a high school kid with a portfolio trying to impress Gene Leedy. Gene had a small office, and I just went and sat at a desk in his office and told him, I'm here, I'm working for you. And he said, okay. I worked with Gene on and off throughout college. And then right after my undergraduate degree, I worked with Gene. I also helped build some houses for him in Boca Grande. We stayed connected, through many, many years ever since I worked for him. And that was one great thing about Gene. He was not just an incredible designer and visionary, but he loved the architecture and he loved people who loved it. So it was really easy to stay connected with Gene because there was always stories to talk about architecture and design. I eventually moved to California, but prior to that moved to New York to work for Paul Rudolph. And Paul Rudolph happened to be Gene Leedy's first employer.
The Strang family and the Leedy family were really
Brandon, you there? Brandon, the video froze. I think Brandon is maybe stepped out for a second.
Give him just a minute to get back. He's been having internet connection problems, but it usually comes back in just about a minute.
I don't think there's anything we can do because he has control over it.
Yeah.
We could ask Max some questions about the renovation that's going on at the house.
Yeah.
That's true.
So I'm Safi Ferris, Jean Leedy's daughter. And when Daddy passed away, we, collectively decided that the best person to sell Dad's house to would be Max. I have not seen it yet because of COVID, and I'm out in Dallas, but Max has done some phenomenal things. So Max, tell us, I think it'd be interesting for them to hear while we've got some time until he gets this rebooted, is what you've done to the house and your thoughts behind renovating it.
Okay.
Well, you want to pick it back up?
I'm back. Let me share my screen again.
I'll answer your question on the backside, Safi.
Okay.
After graduating from University of Florida Architecture School, I came back here to Winter Haven and worked for Gene for a while. And beyond that, I went and launched my own firm, and always had a close connection with Gene. I first encountered the work of Gene Leedy sort of haphazardly. As a kid, parents and I went to Cypress Gardens, and coming back or going, I don't really remember exactly. We sort of got lost in downtown Winter Haven. Actually, it was sort of, as a 8 or 9-year-old, odd houses on Drexel. I always remembered, wow, those were different than, the house that you lived in typical suburbia. 15, 20 years later, going through education, I met Gene at the University of Florida as he was a guest lecturer and gave a lecture as a guest critic. Come to find out that those houses were actually Gene's houses. Began to really research Gene's work, his work with Paul, his transfer into Winter Haven, Polk County, and what he was able to do in a fairly small rural community in the middle of Florida. Pretty miraculous.
Gene Leedy lived in the first house he built on Drexel Avenue Northeast for the remainder of his life. His clients became his neighbors, and he not only curated their homes over 60 years, he curated his neighborly community too. He was truly the genius next door who came over for a scotch and conversation on a frequent basis.
Didn't get to be as close with him until the last 8 years. But so he would build these homes that the people loved and treasured so much, they called them their nest. And he did say he was a nest builder. And they call them their womb or their happy place. And the people that live on Drexel Avenue call it Leedy Land. Gene Leedy was such an extraordinary storyteller. He remembered everything about the past, and he was so colorful the way he spoke. We called him Leedyisms, his sayings. He was called the ace, but he also called other people ace. So it's sort of his trademark to be with the ace. I know a lot of people call it mid-century modern architecture, but he liked to just call it modern architecture. And he believed everybody should be on board with modern architecture.
Gene Leedy was a good friend of mine, as he was many people in Winter Haven, and I was a realtor. So I had an opportunity to list one of his large homes on the Lake Otis. Gene came along and showed me how to film it properly and make sure I had the proper angles and did beautiful photography. I was able to sell that house once and then later list it and sell it again.
I had the pleasure of having dinner with him in Gainesville, and he gave me some advice, which was to value your work. And he told a story about early in his career, and he was struggling in Winter Haven and
people were underbidding him, and he went back to Paul Rudolph, and Paul said, well, your fees aren't enough. He says, I'm not getting work at the fees that I have. How can I get? So it's because you're not respecting your own work to charge enough money for it. And that always stuck with me. And even after I graduated and later in my career in different social settings, he had asked me later, make sure you're charging enough for your work, right? And that's not to say that you should overcharge or be expensive, but it's just to know the quality of your time, and that to make good work takes a lot of time, and to take a lot of time might cost a little bit more. And I always thought that was something that stuck.
So you might hear from some other neighbors, some other homeowners on this street, but they said that Drexel Avenue is not just a neighborhood, it's a lifestyle. Somehow these homes generate a camaraderie among their respective homeowners. And all of these neighbors would constantly get together for drinks and dinner and stories. And, it's exciting to see that camaraderie, go on today.
Today, visitors to Winter Haven can experience the vast array of Gene Leedy's buildings through a town-sponsored audio tour. And there's another generation of cranny spec houses that have been developed by Gene Leedy and one of his acolytes, Max Strang, that are being readied for new homeowners.
Upon Gene's passing, in discussions with the Leedy family, I indicated that, perhaps there was an opportunity to purchase the house, restore it, honor it, and use it as a way to spread awareness of these great little homes and Gene's career for that matter too. So about 6 months ago, with some like-minded investors, we purchased the house from the Leedy estate, and we began fixing it up, restoring it to the level that it deserved. And moving forward, we really want to, have this house serve an educational, academic role, right? And have people come through the house and learn about the house, learn about the Craney spec homes. And it's going to be, it's a very passionate project for me because of the connections and my memories here as a young child. In the years before Gene passed away, we collaborated together to come up with what we call the reissue project, right? Which is taking some of these same ideas from the 50s and 60s and adapting them for today, making these homes more sustainable, and reissuing them.
The courtyard home plans that Leedy co-created with his protege, Max Strang, are perfectly suited to 21st century living with a more sustainable flat roof system, higher insulation values, and greater privacy through landscaping. But the ideas formulated and executed by the Sarasota School architects remain in these new courtyard home plans.
So these homes originally started off as 3-bedroom, 1,100 square foot homes. They're tiny, they're small homes, but they live really, really well. They live very spaciously. And there's some lessons in there. There's some lessons from 50, 60 years ago that are telling us how we should be living today, how we should be living more sustainably, smaller footprint. And I think that's one of the exciting things about these homes is how timeless they really are, and how we can learn from them even today.
My dad was a modern architect, and he was very into about the living space, bringing the outdoor inside. And so these houses, I made them feel like much bigger houses than they really were. And it was just a simple design. They were inexpensive. I believe this particular house, the Craney house, was published in Better Homes and Gardens, and you can actually buy the plans for like $5, I believe. And so this house was built across the entire nation, lots of locations. There's a lot of people, they'll say they have a Gene Leedy house and find out that they actually bought the plans and built this house in another location. But this was the original spec houses in the 50s. At the time, it was probably very different, but people have learned to recognize how important they are.
We hope through this project and some of the other projects people are doing in this neighborhood that people will buy more of these Jean Leedy houses and be in friendly hands and restore them and rehab and sort of show the next generation, my generation, what sort of effect Jean had on architecture in our small town.
And Jean Leedy would certainly welcome new neighbors to his neighborhood with his unique blend of conversation, good humor, and goodwill. He will forever remain Polk County's great innovator and renowned architect next door. Maybe the best way of expressing the influence Jean Leedy's architecture has had on those who have worked and lived in one of his buildings is that they remain, in the words of his dear friend and neighbor, Mary Frances Whittinghill, what she lovingly calls her happy house.
Okay, well, thank you. So with that, I will open it up to questions. I believe there was one while I was having technical issues. We want to go back to that question.
Sure, this is Max. I think Safi's question kind of got answered in the footage, but I just wanted to kind of give you an update on where we stand with the Jean Leedy house. You could see in some of those photographs that the house got pretty run down, and that was, primarily due to Hurricane Irma. The eye passed directly over the house, and that was about 2 years ago, and the storm fell every single large oak tree on the property. Some of the walls, the courtyard walls collapsed, and caused some other damage too. So that was the first thing we did. We went in there and we did a structural assessment. We ended up replacing every single white column that you saw there on the house, because remember, these homes are about 70 years old. So the first step was really to stabilize the house, protect it. And now we're in a good place to start to use the house for a platform for, education about the benefits of small footprint living, of this classic modernism. And it's just amazing that these little jewels of houses, this historic district, is located right here in Polk County.
There's another question. How did you address the flat roof issues?
So these homes were built with a pretty unique structural roofing system. When you see the interior photographs of the house and you look at the ceiling, it looks like a tongue and groove wood ceiling, which it is, but the tongue and grooves, they're blocks of wood that are, I forget if they're like 5 or 6 inches thick. So the wood pieces tongue and groove together and perform like a structural slab. So pretty much that wood underside is the structural slab of the ceiling. So, and again, the homes are 70 years old. With time, they've warped a little bit here and there. The roofing, I'm pretty sure by now every single one of those homes has been re-roofed, if not 2 times, maybe more. But on the Jean Leedy house, we are about to update our roofing there as well.
Okay, there's another question. Is it a coincidence that the Leedy houses in Winter Haven are on Drexel Avenue when Drexel Furniture Company is known for their mid-century modern style?
There's no connection with that. Dad hated Drexel furniture. It wasn't Noel or Herman Miller, you know, he really didn't have anything to do with it.
Are there home tours in Winter Haven? That was another question.
I just, this is Judy. I just wanted to say one thing in regards to the flat roof. As a homeowner, when Gene built it, there was a gravel, it was almost like its own little tiny bathtub. It was gravel in a framed thing, and they lasted for decades, but then the code changed, and so it became a fire hazard. So they couldn't pour it and do it the same way. So now we all have rolled roofing, which is not ideal. It's just not as a homeowner. So, you know, there are many different options for this. And one of the things we found as homeowners, if you find one really good roofer, keep that name for the rest of your life, because, you know, unfortunately the tar and gravel was a perfect solution, no longer available. So there's rolled bitumen now that they're experimenting with to be solar. There's a lot of stuff out there, but it hasn't been brought down, at least not to the homeowner level. So if you guys as architects can solve that problem, you will be phoning in from your island in the Caribbean in better weather than this, but it's an issue. So, good question.
There's another question, I think for Max again. The sustainability changes, or just in general, the updates between the originals and the newer ones. Could you just speak to that for a moment?
Yeah, I mean, and for example, it's a good segue from the roofing part itself. So we're looking at getting some solar panels installed shortly on the Gene Leedy house itself. I imagine with, you know, its footprint, the main wing is only 1,100 square feet, and that outside wing is another probably 400. You know, this could easily be a net zero house, and because we have the footprint on the roof to do so as well. Keep in mind, these homes were built before there was air conditioning. You know, I think Safi and Robert can attest to, you know, at one point in time, the Leedys added a little small window unit or wall unit to cool the entire house down. But before that, it was made to have cross ventilation and, you know, just the airflow. The overhangs of the roof protected the glass a little bit. But moving forward, we definitely want to, you know, increase the insulation, add the active systems like solar. There's also rainwater harvesting and that stuff as well.
I'll turn it over to Robert and Gene's children. Any interesting stories that you think that architects in Jacksonville would be interested in hearing?
Well, actually, I'd like to first off underscore what a fantastic job Max has done on the house. I mean, just he lovingly brought it back to life and actually gave it a little bit of a more of a contemporary feel as well, without disturbing the bones. And it's just, he just did a great job. And I am so happy that it ended up in his hands. And I'd like Max to talk a little bit about what some of the ideas he has for the house.
Okay. And Robert actually was our first honored guest to stay at the house after we completed the first round of upgrades. And before I go further, I also want to underscore, again, just what a great job that Al and Judy did getting all of this story together. And I wish that we actually completed the renovation by the time that we had to release this documentary, but we're still doing some final touches on that restoration. We're in the process of trying to get those finishing touches done, and at that point, the house will be open to the public by appointment for some tours. I saw a little question popped up about that. And, but there's a amazing amount of interest nationally and internationally in small footprint living. How do you make a small house feel big? How do you make them sustainable? So this house has a story to tell, and the lessons from 70 years ago are probably more timely now than they were back then.
One thing from an architectural standpoint is the detailing that's in that house, and you can see it in Judy's house. You know, Judy's house is probably, I think, the closest to being the original house. You know, Dad carried those details out throughout all of his homes, throughout his entire career, so he never compromised, you know, his integrity. The knobs that you see in the cabinetry of Judy's house, he used that throughout the entire, you know, throughout his entire life. But, you know, there were some things like no two materials were to touch. So he never had, you know, the ceiling would never directly butt up to the wall. There would always be some type of reveal there or some type of piece of molding. But a lot of different details, which Max has recognized, I think, because he was raised in a Jean Leedy house. You know, he spent, you know, his lifetime in one with those same exact details. But it's nice to see the house come alive with, you know, some differences than what we had in the past. And so, you know, again, we cannot be more pleased than to have Max, you know, taking care of the house. I mean, it was really a blessing, you know, that he wanted to take on this project.
You know, and Sappy, one of the more fascinating parts is just how your dad used the house as kind of his laboratory, right? It's not the same house that was built in 1956. He, and that's the beauty is just how adaptable it was, right? As the family grew and expanded, the house kind of it rose to the occasion, right? And over time, your dad was constantly tinkering with this, that, or the other. So the house itself went through several different phases. Which actually creates a challenge for when you go back to clean it up and restore it, where do you bring it back to, right? Was it the 80s phase when he painted all the doors black and added all these panels, or was it more the original part? So, you know, I think we have a good understanding of what his philosophy was. And so when it came time to, you know, make some important decisions on this current restoration, we really tried to bring that original spirit back into the architecture now. I know your dad designed a lap pool at one point in time for the house that was never realized. That is one new thing that we've done. We were able to realize that lap pool. So, you know, I think that really opens up the courtyards and allows, you know, I've been over that house, you know, hundreds of times before growing up, and I don't think I ever went to the back courtyard whatsoever.
It was open that space up. Yeah.
It was there, it was privacy, but now you're able to stand and occupy that space and look back at the house. It kind of, it makes it feel even bigger than it did before.
Yeah, one thing that's real interesting about the house, and y'all have mentioned this before, is that it's a very, very small footprint. I mean, I think the interior piece is 1,000 square feet. And as you said, the back bedrooms were, I think, like 400. But the house never had that small feel. I mean, Ingram said it in one of the interviews for the documentary that you know, the house always was bringing the outside in, and that was a big thing about, you know, Dad always wanted to feel you needed to have connection to the ground, and you needed to have connection to the outside. And that was very, you know, that was an important trait in all of his buildings. But, you know, in that particular house, I'm sure that Judy has lived this, is that you can entertain, you know, have a tremendous party in that house just by opening it up. And I remember when my mother passed away, you know, we were all looking at places to have, you know, the reception and so forth. And Daddy goes, no, we're going to have it at the house. And, you know, we just opened the house up. You know, we were in both courtyard spaces, and I think we had like 250 people there. So, you know, the house may be small, but it opens up, you know, to different lifestyles.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask the architects that might be still here, I'm just a homeowner. Al and I are just, journeyman, creative people. But, in television, one of the things that I thought was so great about this collaboration for the film, and something that could be done for other architects, is that here you have public access television. Al, you're always sort of looking for new content, right? He's a great director, great producer. But if you work with public access television, you had a like-minded, homeowner like myself, an architect like Max, who's doing great work. And, it's that collaboration that makes a great house, and certainly a community. These are tiny homes that might not be profitable for an individual to maybe purchase, the skills, or have the skills of an architect. My point is that it's a community. There are 10 houses on this street. So if there's, if there are other like-minded, community people who want a new house and want to hire or work with a fantastic architect like Max, in today's world, it just seems like there's an opportunity then to work with public access television, a homeowner and architect and public access television. It's content, guys, and we're all looking for content for television when we have to sit, in our homes with our masks on. I don't know. It was easy to do this film in a way. Al had done the filming beforehand, but that's all I have to say. The architects that are here, are you getting clients to come to you and say, hey, I want a small house? But I think they're afraid that it's going to be, they want a small house because they may, or they want to downsize, or they really, or they want to upsize, but they don't have the resources. How do they hire you as an architect to do it? That's what I'm trying to convey, is like, you can use like a mini documentary like this, a guy like Al, a guy like Max, and it can work to market your work, but also, to do it in a little bit larger scale so it's profitable for you as an architect. Do you follow what I'm saying? Architects out there? Marianne, I see your face, or Michael, Christopher. I mean, do you get clients who are afraid to use you as an architect because you could be too costly, but they really love your work and really want to hire you, to make it work with, not only to market yourself through, say, public access television and a documentary like this, but actually to, to think about building more than just one with certain clients, or getting a group of clients together. I don't know if that works. You see a lot of crappy developments, so it'd be great if it could work for anyway, sorry, I glitched there. Anyway, just a thought, a question for you architects.
I want to pop in and answer Marianne about the tours. There's actually a website where you can download a self-guided tour. And if you're lucky enough, Max does a lot of tours throughout the year. And if you can get on one of those, that's a good way to see some of the houses. But there is a self-guided tour, and Safi, I believe it's geneleedy.com. Is that correct?
Yep.
Judy, yep. So, yeah.
Robert, or even Max, and Robert, do you have the backstory of how your father was able to get these progressive designs for these municipal buildings back in the 50s? Any thoughts? Was it through renderings or napkin sketches? Do you know the process at all?
He used to sit in the bathtub a lot. He used to tell us that that he used to do his best design work in the tub. And he would sit in that teeny tiny tub with the shower, with the water hitting down. And he said, I would think out the house, you know, as I was sitting there. But, you know, he did a lot of sketches on napkins, and there was always a lot of tracing paper around. And he would always come home. It was kind of interesting. The process was he would get everything to a certain point in the sketch level. He would bring it home and my mother would look over it. And so he would clear off the dining room table, even if even if dinner and the table was set, you know, he was moving everything off and he would roll everything out. But she was pretty integral in kind of giving that first once over, and then he would go back and start working on working drawings. I wanted to bring one thing up. Judy had brought up about, you know, the movement with public television and the movement with getting people into these houses and so forth. And Max and I have talked about this in the past, is how could we, you know, make these homes affordable in almost like a templated type process. You know, I've always told Max, I said, we should just sell kits, you know, and just say, you know, go buy this, 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 and this, and have these houses built out. But I think that there is the possibility, and I think this is something that Max will probably be spearheading down the road, but how do we bring this affordable housing back, make it sustainable, so that somebody can have a Max Strang house or a version of a Jean Leedy house. You know, if we were to have a process in the design where, you know, you can't make a lot of changes. It's not a custom house.
I want to bring, go ahead.
I was going to say, Safi, there's kind of two schools of thought about how we're approaching those reissues. And one is, you know, how do we make these homes as affordable as possible? Because the reality is a lot of the building materials, you can back a pickup truck into Home Depot and pick them all up, right? They're very basic materials, the way they're put together. So, you know, you could put IKEA kitchens in there and do this, that, or the other to bring the construction costs really, really low. And the other part is, what is the most sophisticated version that you can do with that same design, right? Not intentionally trying to make it expensive, but, you know, do you want steel columns? Do you want a concrete roof? Do you want, you know, other things to tailor it that might be, you know, a little more stylish? So I think this home can easily swing either direction. So, you know, and it's appealing to a broad spectrum of end users.
I just want to say something before we go. It was a very special project for me to be a part of, knowing the family and Jean Leedy from the outside. I know that you have the family, and then you have, it's so unique that Max was part of the family in essence, and now he's the architect. Same with Scarpa. It's just so unique to seeing that blend and that connection and sharing your stories, and it was very meaningful for me to do this project.
It was nice to work with you.
Yeah, thanks, Al. You did a great job.
Judy's extremely helpful. She deserves a lot of credit for just helping me out a lot.
She kind of nudges all of us. You know, we're like the world's worst, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, she's really the energy behind getting everything done. So, I mean, we're very fortunate that she's helped.
Definitely.
Hey, Brandon, can I share my screen here?
Sure.
I want to show everybody something.
Control or? Yeah, okay.
Okay. Well, it's gone away here. So let me,
Nice
okay.
plug,
So
Robert.
for those of you thanks, Max. For those of you in Jacksonville, this is a house. Somebody pointed this out to me. They said, your dad did a house in Jacksonville. And I said, no, he didn't. And we got into this argument. And I said, no, my father did not do a house in Jacksonville. And anyway, this is over in not San Marco, off of San Jose. For those of you that know Bob Broward, I think there's a Bob Broward house on the block as well. But I wanted to show you the pictures here because this was very, very eerie. I don't know, Judy, if you've seen this, but this is
Not. Wow.
basically, you know, there it is. But the thing that got me were the jealousy windows were there, that they were the originals, the yellow door on the utility room, the original oven, look at that, and was in there. Anyway, I think that's all. But it was almost spooky seeing that house. And I told my friend, I said, well, yeah, you won the argument. And I said, that's definitely a Gene Leedy design. Then I went back to Safi and I said, Safi, do you know anything about Dad doing a house in Jacksonville? She said, no. And I said, well, there's one there and it's definitely his design. And Safi said, well, I think maybe Dad might have needed some fast cash and sold the plans, but this guy built it. And anyway, it's there in Jacksonville. And I've talked to the owner about, possibly buying it. And it turns out she's got a reverse mortgage and pretty deep. So, but anyway.
I think we found out that woman had actually bought the plans through that Better Homes and Gardens promotion, like back in the 50s. I think.
Yeah, and it was actually, it was an owner, there's only been 2 owners on the house. And I think the previous owner is the one that bought the plans. And the whole thing came up because the friend of mine happened to mention my name, and the guy said, Leedy. He goes, does he live in Winter Haven? And no, he lives here. And he goes, oh, well, I knew of an architect in Winter Haven. And then that's how this discovery evolved. But anyway.
Where's the location, Robert, of that house?
It's off of San Jose Boulevard. It's not far from Lakewood Shopping Center. And it's down a little street. They had a lot of problems. All of the houses on the street, after the consolidation of the city of Jacksonville, the city of Jacksonville stopped maintaining the road. So all of the homeowners have to, deal with that. But anyway, it's there. I've got the address somewhere, but.
The address is in that article. It's 1663 Sherrill Lane.
Right, okay, yeah. So.
Well, thank you all for joining us. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. So this was great discussion and a really great project to document such a great legacy. And I just want to thank Al and Judy and all the filmmakers for making that happen. And thanks, Max, for being available to add your input. It's great work. And thanks to all his family. And if anyone wants to learn about design charrettes in the COVID era, stay tuned next week. Everyone's welcome. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everybody.
Brandon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Brandon.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.